About a year ago, my family came down with COVID-19. It was myself, my husband, kids, and also my parents. After about a week of having it, we were all showing some type of improvement, except for my dad. If you know my dad, you'd know he's very stubborn, and he assured us that he was fine. Well, prior to all of this happening and finding out that we had COVID, we had initially planned a Catalina Island trip to start off the new year. Well, we ended up canceling that trip because of our sickness, and little did I know that the day that we were supposed to leave was the day that I ended up rushing my dad to the emergency room. I had a gut feeling as I was praying to just call and check in on him. This was around 9:30 at night. This time when he answered, he immediately agreed to let me take him to the ER. This wasn't like him at all, so I was panicked and I knew that it was serious. Once I got to my parents' house, I took my dad's oxygen level and it was at a 74. If you know anything about oxygen levels, 74 is extremely dangerous, and so that put me into panic mode, and me and my sister, we got him into the car and we alerted the emergency room to make sure that they have a wheelchair and a room ready for him when we got there. So when we pulled in, they had the wheelchair ready for him, and as they escorted him to his chair, I didn't know that in that hectic, scary moment, that was the last time I'd have any contact whatsoever with my dad for 16 days. The days waiting to get updates on my dad were super long and an emotional roller coaster. Since he had COVID, he was in a COVID wing, and in the hospital, you're not allowed to have any contact or visitors. So from when we dropped my dad off to when we were able to see him again, it was radio silence. We would text him, we'd call him to see if he was okay, and it's not like my dad to not reply, and he had his phone. So it was very scary. We immediately put my dad on all types of prayer chains. People were praying for him everywhere. He had prayer warriors just flooding in. So many people reached out to pray. They stopped by to offer comfort to us. We were staying with my mom at the time. She still had COVID, so it was a really rough time, but we really felt the Lord surrounding us with our community and just people loving on us, and prayer is really powerful. I myself, in those 16 days, have never prayed as hard or relied on the Lord so much in my life. All that we could do was pry information out of the nurses, and we'd get updates every other day from an on-call doctor, and all of those updates were really bad. They didn't give us much hope. They told us that my dad was really far off and it wasn't likely that he would make a comeback. They had him on high pressure oxygen, which means they were pushing 100% flow into his lungs to help assist his lungs to breathe. And that stayed like that for about a week. And the doctor said that if he wasn't going to come off of the assisted oxygen, then they'd have to put him on a CPAP machine, and then eventually he'd have to go to the ventilator. And that was creeping up on us really fast. There were times where I thought that I couldn't lose my dad like this. My kids couldn't lose their papa to this. As I prayed and spent time with the Lord every day, there was a turning point for me where I just felt almost at peace, even though I didn't know what was going to happen. And I didn't know the outcome that would happen after those long 2.5 weeks. I somehow was able to find peace in God. And even though there were so many people praying for us and reaching out and seeing how we were doing and seeing what they could do for us, there was nothing like just praying and sitting with the Lord, and it felt like a warm hug. I felt at peace when I spent that time with him, and he assured me that everything, even if it wasn't okay, it was going to be okay. Every day after that, the phone calls were news of the levels that kept dropping. It was 16 days of unknown fear and complete reliance on the Lord, and my dad finally came home. Praise God. The doctors told us he was a miracle, and they'd never seen such a drastic turnaround for how bad he was. We asked my dad when he finally got to come home how his experience was in that hospital. It was really awesome and cool to see his take on things. He spent a lot of time talking to God in that hospital room. He had no contact with us, no contact with anyone in his room. It was just him and God. And it was him laying flat on his stomach, trying to get as much air as he could possibly get into his lungs. So he wasn't able to watch TV. He wasn't able to reach for his phone. So he said he spent a lot of time talking to God. He also said he didn't know how bad off he was until he heard how the nurses and doctors were talking about him in the room and coming up with a plan to treat him. And he said that he did at one point feel like he may die. And that was a scary thing to hear. But then he also said that he told God, and he thought to God that he wasn't ready, that he wasn't done here yet. And then I believe that this is when things started to turn around, that the prayers started to work really quick and fast. And so my dad ended up coming home on the 16th day of being in the hospital. And right now he's doing amazing. It's been about a year and 2 months since all of this has happened. I always thought it'd be hard to bring all of this back up because it was a really crazy 2 weeks for our family with all the unknowns. But what's craziest to me is how such a traumatic event in my life helped me to rely on the Lord and find peace in him in a situation that I never thought that I could be able to walk myself through. My dad appreciates all of the prayers and all of the encouragement that he got during that time and that he still gets. So I just wanted to finish by saying that prayer really works and God is close to the brokenhearted and he's still performing miracles to this day.